Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest episode of Birds vs. Boys, which we are now deep into OTAs. We have a ton of players in new places, faces in new places. Aiden, you have one of them. He's there. He's beautiful. And then we have a ton of players, wide receivers mainly, holding out. Justin Jeffersons of the world, T. Higgins, and somebody in my own world in CeeDee Lamb. But Aiden, before I introduce you, before I get into anything, there is something that is grinding my gears that I need to get off my chest.
Go for it. That's why we do this podcast. This is a therapeutic session.
I want you to get involved because I think you're going to agree with me. I tweeted something a few minutes ago from the Birds vs. Boys Twitter account. If you're not following us yet, make sure you follow us at Birds vs. Boys Pod on Twitter and everywhere else on social media. A list came out. I don't even forget who did it. Tweeted out. I think it was like top 25 wide receivers in the NFL. Marvin Harrison Jr. is ahead of A.J. Brown. And Malik Neighbors is ahead of Tyreek Hill.
There's no way. Malik Neighbors, that I don't know which of those two is more ridiculous.
CeeDee Lamb is also CeeDee Lamb's ahead of all of them. CeeDee Lamb's like 3. That's
okay. Well, I feel like that's fair. It'd be Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill. Okay, I found it. This doesn't help the cause too much, but I can see how this person is justifying it. Dynasty wide receiver rankings. So over the course of their career from here on out, still AJ Brown is 25 and a proven asset. So for the next 7 years, I'd take the next 7 years of AJ Brown over the next 7 years of Marvin Harrison. So even though it is a dynasty ranking, they still don't make a ton of sense. Like, but the neighbors, like, I don't know.
And it's Marvin Harrison, who's never played a snap in the NFL, also in Arizona with who knows throwing him the football. At least you have consistency in Philly.
See, then that's the thing. It's like, okay, so everybody makes this mistake in dynasty ball is you choose a receiver and you're like, well, I'll have him for so long. Within 7 years from now, we're looking at the same guys. Here's a great example. They have Puka Nacua at 11, but Roma Dunze at 10. But Puka Nacua set the reception record last year. We already know he's a proven asset. And what's the difference between like 24-year-old Puka Nacua and 22-year-old Roma Dunze? Like, there's not that much in terms of like the windows aren't that different in terms of their playing careers.
I know the difference between them. One has played in the NFL and set the record. One has not.
That's a big. Everybody tries to like make this argument based off window remaining of their career. Trust me, the Puka Nacua window and Roma Dunze window are not that different. The road they're gonna get off the turnpike at the same exit.
Maybe we should just name him Puka Odunze. That would be a hell of a name.
Yeah, that's a great name actually.
All right, so that's just I just had to stop with the stupid lists. Okay.
It's stupid lists.
Let the guys play a little bit.
Hey, this is the perfect time for stupid lists.
All right. So how are you?
I'm good. I feel like I'm good because it's a stress-free version of the year where draft is over, free agency is pretty much over. Never really over. Season hasn't started. All we know is the schedule. Everybody's 0-0, and everyone has hope that they're going to end up 17-0, 18-0 soon to come. So the most you can be mad about is these ridiculous lists, and it feels good to, we're 3 months removed from a collapse, and the vibes are good as the guys get into OTAs.
I'm confused. Free agency started?
For 31 other teams.
Okay. That wasn't sure.
Some owners skipped right to running their guys into the ground for 18 games, even though they never put the roster together to play 18 games.
I have a question if you're watching on YouTube. Why does it look like I have like some sort of TikTok filter on?
You do. You kind of do look like you have a filter on. It's good though. I feel like we look professional.
I don't know what's happening.
We'll take it.
All right. So, in terms of our two teams and OTAs, I think we should start with you in Philadelphia because I think the vibes are. Well, I was going to say the vibes are higher in Philadelphia than they are in Dallas, but that's not really that true because obviously the vibes in Dallas are very high with the Mavericks and the Stars both in their conference finals, but in Philly, obviously the Rangers just winning the World Series, but the Phillies are also vibing hard right now, best record in baseball. So this is like the perfect time for Philly in terms of, okay, Flyers did what they did. The hopes went up a little bit for the Sixers, but everything expected to happen happened. But now it's just like Memorial Day, it's Bryce Harper baseball season, and you get to watch Saquon Barkley practice as an Eagle.
It's perfect because the collapse feels like 3 years ago instead of 3 months ago. I think it's still in the back of everyone's head that even if this team starts 6-0, everyone's gonna be like, "Uh-oh, are we going to, is history doomed to repeat itself?" But right now, I think there's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot to be curious about. So, perfect example, Saquon Barkley in this offense. We posted the video on Birds vs. Boys Pod Twitter today. And this is how you know it's OTA season. You will love this. I posted that video. Saquon Barkley caught one swing pass on day one of OTAs. And it's never too early for NFL gambling picks because I went straight to DraftKings and looked at his odds for offensive player of the year. He's at plus 1,600, which seems like great value. He's like 6th or 7th on the list. So you're like a McCaffrey hamstring tweak and missing 2 games away from Saquon being really good value there. And then his over-under rushing TDs was 7.5. I feel like he'd hit over. I know the thing is going to be he gets vultured by the tush push, but DeAndre Swift's commitment to the bit at falling on the one led to so many tush pushes, and he still had 5 rushing touchdowns. So it took one Saquon video for me to be like, okay, let me look up how many touchdowns they expect him to score this year, and let's bet on it.
Did you see what I tweeted towards that video that you tweeted?
Yes, about his hamstrings.
Hammy looked a little tight.
Well, I would defer to you on the health of running backs' legs because you guys never employ a running back with healthy legs. So
no,
you would know.
We did, and then we don't, and then we do, and then we don't. But Zeke had those last couple games there in New England. He looked good.
Zeke has knee ligaments made out of a hamburger helper.
You know what's crazy in terms of, and we're bouncing all over the place. But in terms of OTAs, and you mentioned free agency, and it's not done yet. But I saw players linked to teams that are still out there in free agency. I saw Calais Campbell linked to the Eagles, which I think would be a good fit actually for either of our teams. But Michael Thomas was linked to the Dallas Cowboys, and it said he could compete to possibly win the wide receiver 3 role over Jalen Tolbert. How far has he fallen from being like MVP almost of the league, receptions leader? This guy's going to be a Hall of Famer to, you could come into camp and maybe compete against a guy who's done nothing in the league for 3 years.
Yeah, that is a brutal one from going to, that wasn't that long ago that he did lead the league in receptions to being a free agent who would be battling Jalen Tolbert for wide receiver 3 position in Dallas, which, there's not a lot of ammo in the war chest right now.
Hey, so, it might be wide receiver 2, depending on what happens with these CeeDee Lamb negotiations.
Yeah, that one. They had to get it done. That's, I think, part of why people are over the Eagles collapse. They're not over the collapse, but what helps is their plan this offseason and doing things like locking Devontae Smith up now so that they don't end up in a situation like the Cowboys are in with CeeDee Lamb, and making sure everyone is financially taken care of. AJ Brown as well. So making sure the guys are set. We know our team. We have familiarity. We have consistency. You mentioned the Phillies. I think part of the reason why they are doing well, it's the same team. So if you have the same core, I know we talked about Saquon being added, but for the most part, aside from the 2 retirees, this is the same team.
Yep. Yeah. It is not in Dallas.
So that's why you got to lock CeeDee up. You got to lock him up.
It has to happen. And it's an interesting dynamic because if you listen to people that in the agent world and everything, they're like, Justin Jefferson and CeeDee are kind of tied to each other. Jamar's there too. And it's like, is CeeDee waiting for Jefferson to go and then him be like, okay, I shouldn't get that or above, but this is where I would fall in. Where at the same time, we're hearing that Justin Jefferson's like, listen, I'm going to set the mark, but I'm not going to set the floor. Let somebody else set the floor, and I'll tell you how much better I am than that. So it's almost like CeeDee's waiting for Jefferson to kind of see where then he would fall in line. But Jefferson's like, nah, bro, you go first, and then I'm going to go to the Vikings and be like, all right, I'm 15 million better than that.
Yeah.
So it's a waiting game.
It's a good way to play it if you're Justin Jefferson, right? Like you are pretty much unanimous, the number one wide receiver in the league. So you wait and be like, this is how much everyone else gets paid. I am this many dollars better than they are. Mm-hmm. What if, man, I hope the Vikings don't fumble that, but
I want to have that kind of power in life to go to somebody like, I am this much more better than them to give me
I am this much better at football than every other person who plays football at this position.
Oh God, that must be amazing. So nice. It's unbelievable.
I am this many dollars better than Jalen Reagor at football, and most people knew it.
Speaking of Jalen Reagor, I saw a tweet too that it's just absolutely incredible that the Eagles are this good, especially at wide receiver after drafting J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Reagor, and whoever else instead of Justin Jefferson.
It's a real sick and twisted, it all works out in the end situation because it made them focus more on the wide receiver position and having emphasis on star caliber, like getting Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner, and trading for A.J. Brown because of how bad, like it could not have gone worse in that department. It's funny you bring up Reagor and like that situation. I had to remind myself with that Saquon Barkley video to tie it all together. I can't get too excited because the first year we did this show, Jalen Reagor had like a one-handed catch in training camp. I'm like, they're comparing him to Julio Jones. Maybe it could be. So when I watch the Saquon videos, I'm like, just be excited he's here and don't get carried away.
Well, but I agree. But the only difference is, and this kind of goes almost back to the Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors thing we were talking about. At least you've seen Saquon do it.
True. That is
Reagor. You didn't know. So at least you can fall back on like, okay, I've seen those home runs before in the league.
We've seen the burst. We've seen the burst, and we're going to see it for the first time behind a good offensive
line. And I
line.
unfortunately think you're also going, because I think a lot of it in New York, right? It was the offensive line was terrible for his tenure there. So that's why you saw a lot of 1, 2, -1, 47. I think it's going to be much more consistent in terms of his yards per rush in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and even at Penn State, he was kind of like that, where it was like, all right, it's 2nd and 11 now, but then 3 plays later, it's 1st and 10 from the 18 because he ripped it off for 46 yards. So that does happen, and I think it even happened going back to his college days. But at the same time, it's like it's an offense where if you're constantly worried about that home run threat from Saquon Barkley, the ball's going over the top of you anyway to one of these receivers who are really good. So it turns into a pick your poison situation where it kind of opens up all there's nothing that isn't on the table with this offense. I'm excited for Paris Campbell. I think he has a lot of ability with Dallas Goedert. And then with Saquon, like you said, like you won't
Parker.
1-1. You had Devontae Parker. He had a great first day at OTAs, and that was that. You ever walk into work on a Monday and you're just like,
nope.
No, I'm done. It's very relatable.
Not feeling it.
Not feeling it. Ever. Again.
Done.
That's it. See ya.
On this wide receiver talking, I have a hypothetical. So would you, if you could yourself, like right now, could go back to that draft moment and you could make the call, but you knew it's either the Eagles would have Justin Jefferson and then you could have, I don't know, as your 2. Just anybody, right? Jalen Tolbert, kind of. Brandon Cooks, like somebody like that now. Or you could go through what you went through and came out on the other side with A.J. Brown and Devontae. In that moment, what would your decision be?
It's an interesting hypothetical because you have to think of the domino effects of all those other things. Like if you took Justin Jefferson, do you have that collapse in 2020 that led to you trading Carson Wentz for all of those draft assets, Jalen Hurts becoming your starter, and then you loading up with guys like an A.J. Brown? Like there's a world where they end up with A.J. Brown after Justin Jefferson, possibly. But there's a world where they don't end up with A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, and you have just Justin Jefferson. And is that enough to get you to the Super Bowl that you got to in 2022? Does Jalen Hurts ever take off? I feel like I'd still pull the trigger on the Justin Jefferson one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know. Because of not just the talent of those receivers, it's the domino effect
of everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's very interesting though.
Agreed. It's it really is unbelievable kind of the contrast of where we sit today, right now on May, what is it, May 21st, 22nd, from where we stood the last day of the season with the collapse of the Eagles, the Cowboys comeuppance, the Eagles getting embarrassed by the Giants, the Cowboys winning the division, everything in Philly falling, everything in Dallas rising, to now Dallas getting embarrassed in the playoffs at home. The Eagles losing in the playoffs, but it was kind of, expected. But the contrast of where we are now in terms of the offseason, where the Cowboys fans have been like, this may be the worst offseason we've ever had, question marks everywhere. And Philadelphia had an unbelievable offseason, including a spectacular draft. It's just like, what happened?
It is. It's like you blinked, and it's funny. If you remember, I thought about this because I went on a run today at lunch, and it is hot outside. It is straight up 80s, no cloud cover, sun. I was stuck on a snow hill for that game, and I missed the whole first quarter, and I was just thinking like how far we've come, and it feels like we just blinked an eye. And you're right. It feels like we blinked an eye. The Cowboys were in such a good position. Now the Eagles are kind of, I don't want to say surpassed because I don't love winning the offseason. Win on the field with that product. The Eagles still have question marks, but I do like the way that they address things, that there was clear message that was sent that this is not an acceptable way to end a season. We need to be better. And they did a bunch of different things to try to improve themselves. But yeah, it just feels like you blink and look what happens.
Well, we're going to blink again, and it's going to be Trey Lance starting week 1 in 2025 for the Dallas Cowboys.
It's dangerously getting close.
I honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. I kept thinking the whole time, like, it's going to happen. And I still do think it will happen, but it's starting to, like you just said, get dangerously close where, well, maybe it won't, because the Cowboys historically don't negotiate during the season. They do negotiate at camp. That's kind of where a lot of their guys, I think Dak got his deal the last time. So I wouldn't surprise me if it comes in August. But I don't know. I don't know it's just like they kicked the can down the road so many times, and it's like, well, the tax man's here. And they're like, well, we actually have to pay.
Yeah, I keep thinking the tax man's going to come for the Eagles with all and it kind of is, because we'll get into the cornerback position. But you're right, and but hey, maybe you end up in the same situation I'm doing in my head, where it kind of worked out at the wide receiver position. Maybe the Cowboys do the same thing. It's like, all right, you lose Dak, but it kind of just resets your entire, just the whole identity of your franchise. Maybe it's for a good thing, but the fact that we're having these conversations on the first day of OTAs just doesn't bode well. We just talked about like consistency, familiarity, how important those things are to a team in any sport. And then it's like with the Cowboys, it's like, okay, well, the number one receiver isn't there because he needs a new deal, and also the quarterback might be gone because he also needs a new deal. Like that's not a good start to the whole continuity and familiarity and everything and consistency.
I mean, but if you want to talk about familiarity, Zeke's back.
That is very familiar. That's as familiar as it gets. It is definitely best shape of his life season. Have we gotten any Zeke videos yet showing him?
I haven't gotten any videos, but we did have a clip from Mike McCarthy talking about how great it is to have him back in the building because the energy he brings, because he'll smack a 60-year-old man in the ass and it hurts. Don't know what that means, but that's what Mike said.
So would Diddy, but it's usually frowned upon in other workplaces.
I don't know. I don't know what. It's amazing too if you go to like ESPN depth chart of teams, they have Zeke as RB1, and it's like, what year is it?
What year is it? 2016.
That is the Cowboys quintessential. They are the Jumanji meme.
Oh, like, great movie.
I don't know. It's where I am. That's where I am right now.
Jerry Jones kind of looks like the soldier who hunts Robin Williams the whole movie.
He's never gonna die, is he? He's the crypt keeper.
Well, you just jinxed it. But how do you feel? The NFL, it's inevitable. I think we all knew this, but I think there's starting to be a little frustration amongst players, amongst fans. It'll go to 18 games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the players are thrilled that the weeks are getting shorter, the season's getting longer. And then if you're a fan, you got to have YouTube TV for NFL ticket, but then you need Netflix for the Christmas games. And oh, by the way, the season starts on Peacock, and then make sure you have Amazon for Thursday Night Football. It's starting to be tiring.
Yep.
And they're going to push more and more for more streaming, and they're going to push more and more for a longer season. I think the model makes sense, but Jerry Jones is pushing for the 18-game season. Thoughts on him kind of leading that charge?
I mean, that's what he does, right? He leads the charge to whatever they can and however they can make more money. But I think he won his 3 Super Bowls up front early on, and everybody talks about how hard he ruthlessly worked and all he wanted to win. But then I think he realized, okay, I'm going to brand this now, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make myself and the other owners in this league as big and as powerful and as wealthy as possible. It goes back to a couple of years ago too, when Roger Goodell, his contract was up and the negotiations were happening, and there were owners that didn't want him back, but Jerry led the charge behind Roger Goodell coming back because Roger has made them all so rich. And that's really what it's all about. So if they can sell a Wednesday game on Christmas to Netflix for $85 billion, they're going to do it. And then, somehow we're going to have to get, Roku TV, even though I think baseball just made some deal with Roku TV. They're just like, we need something. Give us something.
Some of those teams need something, though. The Padres, I don't even think you're going to watch them in San Diego right now. So we might need a Roku deal for baseball.
But it's like, it's such a catch-22, right? Because I like count down the weeks, right? During the season. I'm like, how is it week 7 already? And my wife's like, why are you trying? Like, who cares if you miss a couple? I go, you don't understand. Like, it's only 17 weeks of the regular season, and then it's gone, and it goes so quickly. And then you're depressed for a couple weeks after. But I also don't want to get diluted.
Yeah. And I do like the model. I know this has been like since the origination of the Pat McAfee show. I think that's the first ever clip that I saw of that show was this model of 18-game season, 2 bye weeks, and then the Super Bowl ends up on President's Day weekend.
Yes,
you have
please.
a built-in holiday. So Monday is off for everybody after the Super Bowl. It just seems to make the most sense. So that model, I totally understand. It does feel like Jerry Jones has become the pseudo commissioner where he kind of leads the charges on all of these things. And they, I was watching Con Air the other night, and you know how what's Diamond Dog, the 1A guy, had his own plan for when they landed that plane on the island. He was going to take over. It kind of feels like Jerry Jones is Diamond Dog, where he's like, I know what I'm gonna do. It doesn't matter. Like we have the same goals. We're gonna take over this plane, but when it lands, I got my own plan.
It's mine.
This is mine. I'm running this place once this plane is out of the air.
It's wild. It's wild to think about. But yeah, I think the model, like you said, is right. I mean, 18 games, 2 buys, Super Bowl and President's Day weekend is just, it's perfect. So it's gonna happen.
They are continuing to destroy the NBA. It makes them more money. So then you took the 2 bigger days for the NBA. Christmas was their big they own Christmas. Their All-Star weekend is President's Day weekend. You're just flat out annihilating the NBA at this point. And they'll try to continue to do so and take over. And that's how you make more money and you get more streaming opportunities and everything along those lines. But I do, like we keep saying, the model just makes so much sense in my head that I'm okay with it if the players are okay with.
And I think
the 2 bye weeks helps.
I think it's going to extend next year on Christmas too, because Christmas is a Wednesday this year. So we're getting the 2 Netflix games. Next year, Christmas is on a Thursday. So technically, we already have the Thursday night Amazon game. Netflix is not giving up 2 Christmas games, I'm sure. So we're probably going to get the Thanksgiving Day setup on Christmas the following year, where it's 2 Netflix games, maybe a 12 and a 3:30, and then we're getting the night Amazon game.
True. Yep. Makes total sense. Having Thanksgiving, that model, having that on 2 different holidays, I'm sure they are over the moon for that one. It'll be interesting to see how they handle. Would that fall on, if that's a Thursday, when they'd have New Year's too? Am I doing my math correct?
Yes.
It'd be around there.
Yep.
And I know the college football playoffs are changing as well. So as a fan, we'll end up, as the college football playoffs are expanding, we'll have football just every day from
so
Christmas
excited.
to New Year's. And listen, as the guy who gets to play couch coach, I don't hate it.
Nope. Don't hate it
bad.
at all.
Not bad.
It's such a glorious time to be alive in those moments.
It's the best. I got 2 more Eagles OTA points.
Yep.
And then I'll let you rattle off any OTA points that you have. James Bradbury was not at OTAs. That he's not going to be on the team after June 1st. We still owe him the dead cap hit. It's pretty hefty. You talked about the tax man earlier. This is our tax man situation. We screwed up. We screwed up bad. We were like Bradley Cooper at the end of The Hangover when he calls. He's like, we fucked up. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Yep.
So, it doesn't matter that he's not there. I don't think he'll be on the team come June 2nd. Who was there? Starters: Darius Slay, Isaiah Rodgers, and Avonte Maddox in the slot. I found that interesting. And then Cooper DeJean was in the slot for the second team. Quinyon Mitchell was on the outside.
Which I think makes sense, because especially with coaches, they always have this fondness to vets, right? And they're never, where they have a spot. And does that mean by week 2, week 3, Cooper DeJean's not starting in the slot? No.
I was going to say, this is day 1 of OTAs, and we talked about it from the jump being, this is a time to be curious and excited.
Yep.
I think Isaiah Rodgers, Slay being your 2 corners, and Avonte Maddox, who's been your slot for the past 5-6 years, and a pretty good one at that, being your starting slot on day 1 of OTAs makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
At what point does the trajectory of guys like Quinyon Mitchell, a guy considered the best corner in the draft, start to overtake those guys? If they do, Isaiah Rodgers could be a stud. We don't know, because we haven't seen him on the field yet. When does Cooper DeJean, you just say he's talented enough, we got to put him on the field somewhere?
Yep.
And another guy who will be on time, it looks like, Sidney Brown did not practice, but he ran on the side fields, and he's already running back from ACL recovery. Wow. I think that's huge, because he plays safety. He plays slot. So it becomes, the position battles are interesting, and the trajectory of them are interesting as well.
Big time. I think the young bloods are gonna take over sooner rather than later.
I think so as well. And Kaylee Ringo is another guy that you started to see it at the end of last year. He was more valuable on the field than James Bradbury was, and that's how we ended up in this situation today. It's the beauty of drafting well, right? Like, you got a guy in the 4th round, and he can be a starting corner for you. And then, speaking of drafting well, question mark, Jordan Davis, they had their annual autism awareness bike ride. He showed up looking very slim. Best shape of your life season award goes to Jordan Davis, because he showed up for that bike ride looking slim. He lost a lot of weight. People were really excited about that. Shane Gaff did a really good breakdown of him, where his run stopping stats are exactly where you'd want them to be. He is a very good run stopper in the NFL. His pass rushing stats are very bad, but that's what you expected when you drafted him. So they were hoping to mold him into a good pass rusher, but he is as advertised, and he kind of gets hit with this question mark of, is he a good player? He is a good player at what you drafted him to do. Now, of course, you could make that argument. They probably should have drafted Kyle Hamilton instead, but for what Jordan Davis was supposed to be, he is that, and we'll see what he is this year in a slimmed down version.
And I think that kind of also leads into Mozzie Smith. Same sort of thing. Like, he's a good player if you use him for the reasons of the player that he is. And that's kind of what Mike Zimmer's been saying. He basically threw some shade on Dan Quinn's staff about stance and play style. Like, he's not a pass rusher. Like, why are we using him this way? Why did you expect him to lose 30, 40 pounds during the season? Like, he is a big run stuffing one technique, and that's what you drafted him for. Let him do that. So that's where I'm excited with Zimmer. He's got the weight back on. So Jordan Davis slimmed down. Mozzie Smith took that weight from him, put it back on. Thank you very much. And he's just getting him in the position to be successful. So, I mean, am I expecting Mozzie Smith to be, Jordan Davis or no? But maybe. He was a first round pick. and we've also seen, I'm going to end on this. We've also seen a lot of defensive linemen coming from Michigan slow off the ball. It's how they play. They're that kind of wait and see scheme. So it takes them time to adjust to the league. So I'm interested to see what Mike Zimmer can do. I'm interested to see his schemes, how he's going to use guys. That's kind of my biggest takeaway of OTAs, that and CeeDee Lamb not being there. But other than that, kind of status quo in Dallas. So sun is shining in Philly, and there's kind of overcast skies in Dallas. So we'll see.
We'll see. We will see. It's a good time, though. I think it's still good. Even in Dallas, there's still a lot of talent there. So,
yep. So they'll be all right.
They'll be all right. The sun will shine again tomorrow.
It will. It will. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. That was just our quick start to OTAs episode. If you are watching here on YouTube, make sure you head back and smash that subscribe button. Speaking of the arc of guys like Cooper DeJean and Mitchell, that's kind of what's been happening with our YouTube page. So we truly do appreciate all of you out there. And make sure you are following us everywhere on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Birds vs. Boys Pod, as well as anywhere you listen to full episodes, Google, Spotify, Apple, we are there as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Celebrate responsibly, but enjoy.
Chris Hansen here, and I'm going to need you all to take a seat right over there and check out Birds vs. Boys.
I think you're completely right here, and I hate it.
Yep. Hey, idiots. Stop doing dumb things. I got 2 phones. Upset alert. Upset alert. I might go insane.
I think you're already there.
There's no hope. Hope is gone. If this was an AFC North podcast, we'd be done in 15 minutes. Bob Hope. I'm going to drink bleach. That is the team you promised me you were going to be this year. This is the Consciously Hopeful podcast.
I'll be watching.